From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Sitting in tonight, Diane Sawyer.
Good evening. The Supreme Court leads the news tonight because today the court expanded the reach of the death penalty to include certain teenagers and people who are retarded. The court said there is nothing in the Constitution which prohibits the execution of 16 and 17-year-olds convicted of murder. The court also said that retarded death row inmates may be executed. But as ABC's law correspondent Tim O'Brien reports, the court was also careful to say that mental capacity should be considered during sentencing.
I think a little, or maybe a whole lot, has been retarded.
John Penry had been diagnosed as having the reasoning skills of a 7-year-old after he raped Pamela Carpenter 10 years ago and then stabbed her to death. Today, the Supreme Court, in a landmark ruling, said Penry's mental retardation would not automatically prevent his execution. Justice Sandra O'Connor was pivotal in creating the new but limited constitutional principle. O'Connor agreed with the court's liberals that mental retardation is a factor that must be considered by the jury, but then sided with the court's conservatives in ruling that those who are mentally retarded may still be executed. The court's conservative majority said neither the Constitution itself nor this country's evolving standards of decency justified a blanket ban on executing retarded people. The court applied that same principle today in another major ruling refusing to ban the execution of 16 and 17-year-olds. The court was acting in the case of Kevin Stanford, who at the age of 17 robbed, raped, and then shot to death a young gas station attendant, the mother of 2, and the case of Heath Wilkins, who was 16 when he stabbed his liquor store clerk to death. Justice Scalia, for a 5-4 majority upholding their death sentences, said there is no national consensus against executing juveniles, that of the 37 states that have the death penalty, more than half allow the execution of 16-year-olds. Today's rulings are a double defeat for the opponents of capital punishment.
This decision rejects deterrence and rejects rehabilitation and substitutes pure vengeance. The theory is if you're old enough to kill, you're old enough to die.
Juries will still be permitted to consider a defendant's age, and conservatives approved holding youthful offenders responsible.
If you give them, as some people want, in effect, immunity, you will even further raise the rate of juvenile crime.
A Harris poll shows that most Americans overwhelmingly oppose executing the mentally retarded or those under 18. But the court today was unmoved, saying while it may judge the constitutionality of such executions, what's appropriate is a matter exclusively for the state legislatures. Tim O'Brien, ABC News, Washington.
In another ruling, the Supreme Court said police don't have to use the exact words of the Miranda decision when reading suspects their rights, as long as the words they use reasonably convey the idea that a suspect is entitled to a lawyer and that what he says can be used against him. And in still another case, the court declined to put a ceiling on the amount of money that can be awarded in personal injury lawsuits. In a moment, cleaning up the oil after a bad weekend of spills, and later in the broadcast, the national heartbreak of teenage pregnancy. It happens to 1 out of every 10 American teenage girls. And emotions running high in Texas as they fight to save the Treaty Oak.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Kellogg's Special K.